Hello po mga ka-nursing, welcome back po sa ating channel. For today's video is the continuation of our topic, body fluids and electrolytes. The focus will be the regulation of body fluids. So how do we maintain the state of homeostasis po between the body fluids ng ating katawan? Okay, so we will first discuss the basic concepts about the regulation of your body fluids. Okay, so the first concept that we need to know is that your regulation of body fluids and electrolytes is basically defined as the balance between the fluid intake and fluid loss. Okay, and this fluid intake and fluid loss can be affected by an illness or any disease that can upset the balance that may lead to an increase or too much fluids in the body or too little fluids in the body. So there are a lot of diseases that can actually lead to that. For example, kidney diseases, heart diseases, and lung diseases. So those are conditions that may lead to the increase or decrease of fluids in our body, meaning there has been a problem in terms of the fluid intake and fluid loss. For us to better understand this, let us first discuss the fluid intake. So the concept of fluid intake. Okay, we'll talk about fluid intake. So this is basically the intake. Okay, these are yung tubig or any fluids that we are drinking, okay, whenever we are thirsty or whenever we eat foods, okay, that contains water. Okay, so those are basically your fluid intake. Okay, and fluid intake, according to our book, an average adult can consume or drink water of around 1,500 ml per day, and that is during a normal activity with normal body temperature. Of course, it can go up depending on the person's activity and the person's body temperature, which can be affected by different factors such as your environment. Especially ngayon, na feel pa rin po ang dry season sa Pilipinas. Then, sobrang init. Okay, sobrang init. And that could actually lead to increased core body temperature, which will now trigger us to drink more. Okay, because we are losing more fluids din naman if there is an increase in temperature. Okay, we will talk more about that later on. Okay, and when I talk about fluid intake, the normal or the average fluid intake that our body needs every day is 2,500 ml for our body to normally function well. Sir, sabi mo, average adult only drinks 1,500 ml per day on a normal basis. Okay. However, the body needs 2,500 ml. How do we catch up with the loss, which is 1,000 ml? So the remaining 1,000 ml, it actually comes from foods and from oxidation of these foods from the metabolic process. So basically, when we eat foods, okay, nag-ulam ka ng sinigang, there's a fluid in that. Okay. When you eat fruits and vegetables, of course, there is a fluid content on that particular food that we're going to eat. And according to our book, that is approximately 1,000 ml that we got or that we get from those foods. Okay. For us to better understand this, here is a table, okay, showing the amount of fluids that we are getting depending on the sources. Okay. For example, here we have your oral fluids. Your oral fluids, okay, your oral fluids are the water or any fluids that we drink orally, okay, or we take orally, which will now give us an average of or a range of 1,200 to 1,500 ml. Okay, while the second one is your water in foods, so foods such as your fruits, vegetables, and even meat products. Okay, so we are getting around 1,000 ml from those products or from those food that we eat. And of course, the byproduct of metabolism, which will give us a total of 200 ml. And that will give us a total ratio of your fluid intake, which is around 2,400 to 2,700 ml. That is per day. And the average is 2,500 depending now on the activities that you are performing. So, but if your lifestyle is actually sedentary, that normal fluids will actually go down, okay, depending on your activity as a person. So that is the average daily fluid intake for adult. Okay. sir, we are losing water. Okay, what is the triggering mechanism in order for us to maintain the body fluids and that will dictate our body to drink? Okay, so with regards to that, we have what we call your thirst mechanism. Your thirst mechanism is being triggered by a part of the brain. Okay, trigger po yung part ng brain natin which actually responsible for homeostasis. Okay, we are going to talk more about that later on. So thirst mechanism is basically the primary regulator of fluid intake. This is the reason why, like every 15 minutes or every couple of minutes, we feel that we want to drink, okay, or the urge to drink, okay, and that's actually your thirst. And your thirst mechanism is triggered by the following factors. Number one is if there is the osmotic pressure of the body fluids. So the osmotic pressure, we were able to discuss this already in our previous videos. So kindly go back po sa previous video natin para mas maintindihan natin kung bakit nakaka-apekto ang osmotic pressure sa thirst mechanism. So thirst pressure is basically yung movement po. Osmotic pressure is basically the movement of excess fluids from the from the interstitial to intravascular. Okay, intravascular compartments. Another one is your vascular volume. So vascular volume, we are referring to the water of the blood, which is your plasma. So the amount of plasma in the blood can also trigger your thirst mechanism depending on the amount or the volume of plasma. Okay, so if we have a decreased plasma or decreased volume of plasma in our blood, basically your thirst mechanism will be triggered. Okay, mas nati-trigger siya kasi nga pag kokonti ang plasma, that's considered as dehydration na po sa ating vascular system. Okay, another one is the hormone angiotensin. Okay, for the angiotensin, we will going to talk about it later on pagdating natin sa mga hormones affecting now your fluid regulations. So, when we talk about thirst mechanism, okay, thirst mechanism happens every 15 minutes. So, it happens every 15 minutes and it is relieved by a small sip of water. Small sip of water. Ibig sabihin, sir, even if we're not going to drink a 1 full glass of water, our thirst will be relieved, even just a sip of water. The answer is yes, because that's the only amount necessary for us to satisfy yung urge natin na uminom. Okay? Basta makatikim lang or makadampi ng tubig ng ating labi is actually enough to relieve now our urge to drink. Okay? And the reason that every 15 minutes is nauuhaw tayo and it is being relieved by a small sip of water, the reason is to prevent overdrinking. Okay. Sabi nga natin, too much is not good in our body. Okay, too much is not good in our body. And because of the reason that water is being reabsorbed sa ating katawan every 30 minutes to 1 hour. 30 minutes to 1 hour. So, if you drink a lot of fluids for a single moment ng like after 15 minutes, okay, that would actually increase na substantially the amount of volume. And take note, hindi pa naman siya na-absorb ng tubig, iinom ka ulit ng marami until such time magkakaroon tayo ng stockage of your fluids or water in your body. And when we talk about this one, your thirst mechanism is being regulated, okay, regulated by a part of the brain, okay. So what is the thirst center of the brain? So that's the question now. So if you know the answer po, paki-comment na lang po sa ating session. But of course, we are going to give the answer today. And while waiting for your answers po, again, paki-subscribe naman po ang ating channel and click the notification bell para po aware kayo sa mga next videos natin. So for the question, what is the thirst center of the brain? If you answered hypothalamus, you are correct. Okay? So hypothalamus is basically the thirst center of the brain, which is actually the part of the brain that maintains equilibrium or homeostasis. So that's how important hypothalamus is. Okay? Sa endocrine system po natin, napakaraming function ng hypothalamus. Okay? yung ibang organ po natin or ibang gland in our body will not function without hypothalamus working. So that's how important hypothalamus is. Okay, so I hope that we are good with that. So we are done discussing your fluid intake. We are going to discuss now your fluid output. So fluid output is basically the route of fluids that is being excreted out of our body. Okay, so the routes include your feces, your urine, and your insensible losses. Insensible losses includes your skin during perspiration and your lungs during expiration of air. Okay, of course, majority of the fluids are actually being released or excreted through our urine, which is amounting to 1,400 to 1,500 ml. Okay, while the feces is 100 to 200 ml. Okay, and your sensible losses is around 3,500 to 400 for the lungs and skin, and sweat is around 1,000 ml. Of course, that would still depend kung gaano ka po kadalas magsalita. Okay, especially for us na mga nagsasalita po lagi, the more that we are actually expiring air. So that would actually affect yung insensible losses natin. And that would give us a range of around 2,300 to 2,600 ml of body fluid loss. Okay? So how do we maintain homeostasis in our body? So there are two main things that we can do or our body is doing to maintain homeostasis. Number one is through the organ system that is involved in homeostasis plus your hormones. So the organ system that are involved in your homeostasis maintenance are your kidneys, lungs, cardiovascular, and gastrointestinal system. And these are actually the organs that are directly responsible. But just like I told you guys during our first video, almost all organ systems in our body are actually involved in maintaining or regulating body fluids and electrolytes. And regarding your hormones, these are the hormones that are responsible in maintaining homeostasis. Your ADH or your anti-diuretic hormone, your renin angiotensin aldosterone system or your RAAS, and of course your atrial natriuretic factor. We are going to discuss this one by one. Let us start with the organ system. For the organ system, we will only focus on one of the organ, which is kidney, because this is the primary regulator of body fluids and electrolyte balance in our body. So this is the main organ involved. And your kidney also responsible in regulating the volume and osmolality of the blood. Okay, because the kidney will decide how much fluids or how much plasma will be filtered in the glomerulus ng ating kidneys. So that will determine now the amount of urine. So pag mas marami tayong naiihi, of course, mas konti ang volume ng dugo, mas tataas ang osmolality. Again, when we talk about osmolality, that is the amount of solute concentration in our blood. Okay. Another one, it also controls the water reabsorption in the plasma. Okay. So, sabi ko nga po kanina, si kidney ang nag-filtrate ng ating blood or ng plasma, which will turn out to become urine. So, depende po yan sa function ng kidney. And of course, depende sa factors na meron yung katawan natin on how much urine will be excreted and how much sodium will be reabsorbed. Another one, it also maintains electrolyte imbalance. Of course, yung retention and excretion of sodium, that's another responsibility of your kidney. And take note that sodium is the major cations or the major electrolytes intravascularly. Mostly po siya ang nag-determine ng osmolality ng dugo. Okay, if there is an increase or decrease osmolality, basically po na related po siya sa amount ng sodium na meron sa ating dugo. Okay, na-discuss din po natin yan sa ating previous video. And the last one is acid-base regulation, because kidney is the one that is excreting your bicarbonate. Okay, excreting or retaining your bicarbonate, which is the metabolic factor in terms of acid-base balance. Okay, the other organ involved in the acid-base balance is your lungs. So those are about your kidneys. Okay, again, if you do have questions, kindly comment it down po sa ating comment sections, and we will try to answer that sa ating mga next videos. Okay. Okay, so we're done discussing your organ system, specifically your kidney, which is the major organ system that is responsible in the maintenance of your homeostasis. We are now going to proceed and discuss the hormones that are responsible or that are involved in maintaining homeostasis in our body. The first hormone that we're going to discuss is your antidiuretic hormones. From the word itself, antidiuretic, so it's anti against, diuretic means diuresis, pag-ihi or urination. So that's anti-urination. Okay? Meaning if you have too much antidiuretic or too many antidiuretic hormones in your body, you will not going to urinate, or your urination volume will decrease. While if you have too low antidiuretic hormones in your body, okay, your urination will increase, okay, or the urinary volume will increase. Okay, when I talk about antidiuretic hormone, this is basically a hormone that regulates water excretion from the kidney. Again, when you talk about ADH, it prevents a person, okay, to urinate in high volume, while in low volume of ADH, okay, or low level of ADH, it will make a person urinate more. Okay, aside from that, it is triggered by an increased serum osmolality. Okay, increased serum osmolality, causing collecting ducts to be more permeable to water. What does it mean, sir? Again, when we talk about serum osmolality, this is the amount of solute concentration in the blood of the vascular system or in the blood. So if there is an increased osmolality, meaning there is more solute in our blood, okay, or in our plasma compared to the normal. Okay, like for example, if you can still remember our discussion during the first video, okay, if we need to maintain a 0.9%, okay, 0.9% of sodium chloride in our plasma, so that is the normal isotonic solution. Okay, that's the normal tonicity of sodium chloride in our blood. So if it increases more than that, okay, the blood will become viscous by nature, or the blood will increase its serum osmolality. Okay, so mas marami na po yung solute compared to that of the plasma. So when the brain detects that, specifically your hypothalamus, it will try to balance the problem. So how is it going to do that? So it will now cause collecting ducts to be more permeable to water. So permeable to water, meaning, okay, more water will retain in our body. How? By decreasing or by increasing the amount of antidiuretic hormones in our body. So we will not urinate. So may iwan po yung tubig sa katawan, causing now increased volume sa ating vascular system. And of course, it will dilute the blood. Okay. Other factors that affects ADH in the blood is your the release of ADH is your blood volume, okay, temperature, pain, stress, and some medications. Okay, some medications. So of course, there are diuretics na tinatawag. Diuretics are the medications that will allow us to urinate more. Okay, so that is your ADH. So basically, maapektuhan talaga ng hormone na to yung yung fluids ng katawan, because this hormone will determine how much urine will be excreted from our kidneys. Okay, another one is your so this is your antidiuretic hormone. Another one is your renin angiotensin system, or you also known as your this is actually known as your RAAS system, or your RAAS, renin angiotensin system. Okay, so basically this is a process in our body wherein it will retain fluids and sodium, okay, to increase the blood volume. So how is it working, sir? Okay, so the system goes like this. Okay, it will be triggered by two several factors. Number one is the blood pressure drop. Okay, if our blood pressure goes below 90/60 millimeter mercury, and if the fluid volume or our plasma also drops. Okay, so basically, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na hypovolemia. So, hypovolemia. So, hypovolemia is basically a decrease of fluid volume sa ating katawan. Okay, so when that happen, it will trigger. So, the hypothalamus will going to stimulate now your kidney to produce the hormone called your renin. Okay, same thing, the hypothalamus will also trigger the liver to release angiotensinogen, which is another hormone. Angiotensinogen is very important para ma-absorb tayo ng fluid later on, kaso hindi natin siya magagamit as angiotensinogen. So how are we going to use this? It needs to be converted to angiotensinogen or angiotensin 1. Paano pa natin siya i-convert? Through the aid of your renin. So the renin will help in the conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Okay, and this angiotensin 1 needs to be converted again to angiotensin 2. How is it converted? Okay, through the release of your ACE or angiotensin converting enzyme by your lungs that will aid now the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. So your angiotensin 2 will going to do two things. Number one is that angiotensin 2 will act as directly on blood vessels, causing now vasoconstriction. So it will cause vasoconstriction or it will narrow our blood vessel. Another one, the function ng angiotensin 2, which is the converted angiotensin 1 from angiotensinogen, okay, it will trigger your adrenal gland to produce your aldosterone. Okay? Your aldosterone is basically a hormone that will act on your kidneys to stimulate reabsorption of salt. And when salt is reabsorbed, okay, kasama niya pong marireabsorb si water, because as the saying goes, where sodium goes, water follows. So if nagkaroon na ng increased water because of the increased sodium concentration in your blood, so magre-reabsorb din siya ng water, it will not act in your kidneys. Okay, it will now act in your kidneys, so yung reabsorption mangyayari sa ating kidney. Then eventually magkakaroon tayong increased blood volume, then eventually will affect also yung blood pressure natin. Kasi kapag tumataas ang ating blood volume, ang blood pressure din natin ay tumataas. So that is basically your RAAS system, okay, or your renin-angiotensin system. And the last hormone responsible for the homeostasis, okay, or maintenance of homeostasis of body fluids in our body is your atrial natriuretic factor, or your ANF. So your ANF, so from the word itself, ANF is atrial. So this is being produced in the atrium of your heart. So basically, natitrigger po siya if there is an excess blood volume. So lumalabas po siya kapag marami tayong plasma or there is excess blood volume. And when the atrial walls are being stretched. Okay? Pag nilalabas po siya, excess blood volume, so basically, ang ANF po, okay, will result to decreasing the blood volume kasi may excess po tayo. Okay? So it promotes sodium wasting and acts as a potent diuretic by decreasing, and that will lead to decreased blood volume. So kanina, aside from the ADH, which will determine the amount of fluids na ilalabas, okay, at ipapasok at i-retain sa katawan, okay, at aside from that, meron tayong your ANF, which the main focus is just to retain, or to remove excess fluids from our body, okay, to maintain a normal blood volume. So that is your atrial natriuretic factor, or also known as your ANF. Aside from that, aside from it releases or it promotes sodium wasting and acts as a potent diuretic, okay, it also inhibits thirst, meaning it blocks the thirst mechanism. So it blocks the thirst mechanism that will now lead us to prevent or reduce fluid intake. Eventually, it will affect also our blood volume. So those are the 3 hormones responsible or involved in the maintenance of body's homeostasis. So again, if you do have questions regarding our topic, just kindly comment it down po sa ating comment section. And don't forget to click subscribe and notification bell. Paki-like and share na rin po ang ating videos if you enjoyed and learned watching po. So, see you po sa ating next videos. Bye for now mga ka-nursing.